you're not aware of it, protection is always best. So you want to make sure you use water repellent to treat the outside of your leather gloves to keep them water repellent, because you don't want whatever you're touching or dealing with coming in contact with your skin, because it can kill you. As well, if you can get puncture resistant ones, remember you're going to be wearing these for a long time, so your hands have to be able to breathe. It's disgusting when your hands get super sweaty and can lead to the inside of your gloves getting dirty. If it's not loosened in layers, it should be breathable. Now, in the AWOL bag, you need a tool. And the tool I have chosen to deploy in the AWOL bag is a tomahawk. Tomahawks, we'll be covering in a later segment, is a tool which you would use for both hammering and chopping. For the field, there's about 1 million different uses for a tomahawk. According to the worst case scenario daily calendar, what is taught and sold in general consumer mundane media is how to foil a UFO abduction. Step 1. Control your thoughts. Do not think of anything violent, upsetting. Extraterrestrial biological entity, the EBE, may have the ability to read your mind, so you wouldn't want to piss them off. Resist verbally. Firmly tell the EBE to leave you alone. No! Go away! Resist mentally. Picture yourself enveloped in a protective shield of white light, or in a safe place. Telepathic EBEs may get the message. That's right, picture yourself in a white ball of healing light. Your fear, the fear itself, is a white ball of healing light. I don't think so. As a last resort, go for the EBE's eyes. You will not know what its other sensitive areas are. Well, that's just not going to cut it for the WOGs, so we're going to be discussing the smaller edged weapons variant for personal defense against extraterrestrial weapons. You must understand that when investigating anything to do with the paranormal, we must eventually come to the realization there's a very strong chance that anything that is outworld related, be it extraterrestrial, interdimensional, something to that effect, they could be nasty. In fact, you cannot deny the fact that all of life is based upon conflict. One bigger thing eating a smaller thing, be it fire, be it fish, be it whatever. You know, everything always eats something. So man has no natural predators that we know of, but I think that we may just have that. And on the off chance, which is probably very likely, that supernatural creatures are in fact out to kill us, eat us, and take our planet, we must be able to defend ourselves and our families. So from that, we're going to be going over some pretty standard edged weapons and other variants that you can use. In my own personal opinion, what I think might be a consideration for you to consider. Now, what we got here is starting with, you've got, your traditional means of defense. You've got your throwing knife, you got your shuriken here. Now the throwing knives I find are largely just for show. When you start dealing with knives and axes and stuff, you're getting into, before the gun was created, for several thousand years, it was all about the steel. It was all about the sword and the blade. That's what ruled the planet. And when you run out of ammo, your gun's a fancy club, so you got to be able to go to something that's a backup. Now, naturally, you can't be walking around with guns, because, well, that's illegal. But you can walk around with certain knives, provided you have a reason to carry them. Getting into this this is kind of my own selection. I'll just point out the pros and cons of each. Every one of these is effective, and you must bear in mind, there's no one ultimate knife. You'll have all these gurus talking about, oh, this knife is good for this, and that knife's good for that. You got to base on your size, body type, strength, mass. You might be able to give a guy who's 6'5" and 300 pounds a massive battle axe, but you give the same thing to Sim, man, he's dog food. So what I'd recommend is finding the right thing that works for you, and that's very, very important. And starting with the beginning, you got your daily carry, which I use a folder. Everyone should have a folder with them at all times. It's not just a weapon, it's a tool. Mine's a striker, already talked about it. Very good knife. There's lots of folders on the market, but if you're going to go one step beyond, if you're going to be actually investigating the paranormal, and you believe that you could be running into a conflict, there's a few things you want to think about. Cold Steel made a sanitized product. This one's made by Cold Steel. This is a Tanto, but you'll notice the tip is gone. That's because this is actually made of plastic. Well, not exactly plastic. It's made of a substance called Zytel, which is 49% glass. It's like a fiberglass resin combo. You sharpen it with a nail file you can get off of your SOG. You just take the edge up. Very, very efficient. Won't get picked up by metal detectors. This is very handy if you're going into nightclubs that you believe could be run by supernatural entities. Then you've got the standard fare push dagger. This one's got a Microtech clip on it, which you can pick from, I think it's Microtech or techlock.com. Again, 4-inch blade on it. Also made by Cold Steel. Great little knife, but again, very small, concealable. You haven't really got the punch. Moving up, though, we move into the Robert Tazula line where you have the Kudas. Now, this is a designed fighting knife. And a lot of people would say that these knives are amazing. Look at this, look at that. They have all these different features that they talk about, but the problem with the new modern edge fighting knives is none of them are battle tested. And you cannot get away from stuff that has been battle tested. Battle tested, Kydex, sheaths, all that stuff. None of it's been battle tested. People use leather sheaths because they're quiet, because they protect the knife. These will actually scratch your blade. So there's certain pros and cons to going with new technology versus old technology. When we get into old technology, the king of the edged weapon world is the kukri, designed and made by the Japanese. This is a Himalayan imports kukri, which I've sanitized. It's made by this little fella here, KS. It's all hand stamped, hand done. It's a 1/4 inch thick. I mean, look at the thickness of that spine. When you compare, you know, handmade weapons versus factory weapons, look at the difference there. Okay, this one here is an 18-inch Angola, which is their heavy variant. It's the exact same size as what the Gurkhas used in the Second World War. And in the land of doing supernatural exploration, generally, now just purely for supernatural combat now, I would say in close quarters that the kukri is pretty much king. Got to bear in mind, any entity could be involved. If you wind up rolling around on the ground, this gets a little bit nasty, and you have to invert, and you're doing lots of this stuff, and you got to be careful because it's very, very heavy. It's designed as a chopping implement as well as a weapon, so it's kind of a gladiatorial thing. But on the whole, I used to think this was the best, you know, chopping implement ever. But again, it comes down to personal taste. Now the problem with these is that they're heavy, and weight is a consideration whenever you're doing anything to do with well, if you got to hump the kit in, right? If you got to carry it down a cave or a plank, you're going through a house. I mean, you know, all your kit weighs something, and this thing is heavy, which slows it down. And whenever you're dealing with any kind of edge weapon, you got to remember, speed kills. Speed is efficient. So when we turn the Wayback Machine, you start looking at different types of edge weapons and whatnot. What I think is probably the fastest edge weapon you can make, it'd probably be, I'd have to go with the Tomahawk. And the U.S. Army Rangers also agree with me because they still have Tomahawks that their troops carry. They're not issue, but a lot of guys carrying them are allowed to do it. That's from the U.S. Army Rangers, the Reed Rangers. In their first set of orders, it says always keep your Tomahawk sharp. And I believe that Tomahawks are a very superior weapon. Now this is one called a M&W Canada Black Hawk Tomahawk. Very, very inexpensive. You get these Tomahawks. Cold Steel makes a variety of them off of eBay. You can get them for less than 50 bucks. It's very, very lightweight, and it can be thrown. Now when you throw an axe, it's not like throwing a knife. Incidentally, there's no such thing as throwing knives. You can throw any knife, okay? Some knives are not designed to be thrown. Why would you throw your knife anyway? Because then you're throwing an item away. A tomahawk and a kukri. Comparison between the two. The kukri has a larger cutting surface, and it would be good, depending on how you're doing your fighting style. I mean, some people say, I'll use a tomahawk and a kukri. I don't know. I think that's getting a little excessive. You can only carry so many bladed implements. But when you throw them, you actually, the only way you can really do it is to throw it. You know, you got to build yourself a little target, go outside and start screwing around, okay? When you huck it, you want to bring it over top as such, and you let it go here so that when you release it, you become aware of how it spins and moves forwards. You throw a kukri the same way you throw an axe. You do not throw a kukri by the blade, you throw it as such, and when you release, you're releasing it here, not like this, like here, so that you open your hand and then it gets out of your hand. So you can get a lot of force out of a kukri. I wouldn't recommend throwing them, but they can be thrown as an improvised munition. At this range, you've got you know, a solid hit with your tomahawk, and they are designed to be thrown. So you can get at your maximum effective throwing range on maybe 30 feet from that target. If that was either an EBE or an Outworld entity or whatever, you've got an ability to engage that target at that kind of range. And then you can close with the kukri. Now that's an idea, but again, you don't want to be carrying two things. Now the kukri can be thrown the same way. The added bonus of a tomahawk over a kukri is that the tomahawk has a hammer edge which is designed for hammering. So you never really think about it, but if you got to go through a doorway, you got to break locks, you've got to hammer things, you've got an already built-in mace designed for that purpose. The tomahawk is battle tested. The Indians killed hundreds and hundreds of settlers with these things. They're outstanding for hand-to-hand combat. They're lightweight, and you have a tool as well as a hatchet as well as a weapon. So in my opinion, I believe the tomahawk to be superior for the kukri for its versatility. But as a purely combat weapon, the kukri is probably better. For carrying purposes, I recommend the tomahawk to wogs. But now what kind of tomahawk do you use? If you go to these companies like RJC Forge or American Tomahawk Company, you're paying $400 for an axe. Not really the way I go. I would go with a wooden handle, however, which can be easily replaced because you are going to crack the handle off while practicing. Now there's a couple of different guys who decided to make a combat tomahawk. It's a fellow who cooked one of these up, and this is what the head looks like. Now this was the Vietnam issue era tomahawk, okay? I believe the guy's name was Langolier or Langolia or Leg L something, and definitely a Vietnam tomahawk. And what he had was he put an edge here for catching. So if you were ever working with anyone